Today's guest on the Ranveer Show might be recognized by a lot of people as Aditya Roy Kapur's elder brother or Vidya Balan's husband, but I recognize him as one of the top Bollywood producers in India today. Siddharth Roy Kapur has worked his way up from becoming a top corporate to becoming a top Hindi film industry producer. He's produced movies like Barfi, like Jodha Akbar, like Fashion, like Dangal, and those just round off a long list of iconic movies that most of us have grown up watching. So, this conversation was a deep dive into his complex mind. He's had a long, successful career, learned a lot through that career. But what I love about this man is that he's extremely articulate. He's got a very complex mind, and he's able to take all those complex thoughts and put them out into the world in very simple words. We spoke about everything from the future of India to relationships, to his own childhood, to ethics, to leadership, to how to create an extremely iconic and extremely successful legacy in modern India. So if you're someone who chases greatness, you should watch this particular podcast till the end. One of the most beautiful minds of the country on the Ranveer Show. Welcome to another gorgeous episode of the Ranveer Show. Sir, I'm honored to have you on the show today.
Great to be here.
We've got Siddharth Roy Kapur, one of Bollywood's what I call legendary film producers. He's a super humble guy, so he'll kind of play it on the down low. But really, really honored to have you on the show, sir.
It's great to be here.
So, sir, the business side of it is cool. But my question to you is that all three of y'all, the brothers, so Siddharth, Kunal, Aditya, y'all are very well-spoken people. And I see a lot of humility radiating out of you guys. So my question to you is that what went correct in your childhood? Because I personally believe that humility and being well-spoken, maintaining your relationships, ethics are a huge part of careers. So could you go back to your childhood and just tell us about what's gone right there?
So to start with, thanks for the compliment. I mean, on behalf of my brothers as well. Yes, I would agree with you. I think it does come from having had a very grounded childhood. We were very exposed to the arts, because of my mum. She was a choreographer. She was a model. She's a former Miss India. She's been on stage as a dancer since the age of 6.
Yeah.
And, it's something that we always had rehearsals happening around us, etc. So we were very exposed to the arts very early. And I think, just the grounding of having a really strong values-based sort of upbringing that we did helps you in life. And, we had wonderful grandparents. We had, great cousins that we grew up with. So it was just, I think, all in all, a pretty grounding childhood and not a childhood where we were pretty much encouraged to follow whatever pursuit we had. There were no restrictions on, being free-thinking, free-spirited, very open culture of debate and dissent.
Wow.
Which is always nice to grow up with because then you tend not to rebel that much in your teenagers because there's not much to rebel against. And our parents were very, very open-minded.
Got it. And do you see the wrong kind of upbringing kind of precipitating right now with people you work with or you work around?
I mean, I wouldn't call it wrong, because everyone has their own compulsions in terms of when they have children, they're dealing with their own issues. And therefore, things that they do might have an impact on their child without them intending to have it. But yes, I think you carry you carry your childhood with you well into adulthood.
Yeah, 100%
in fact,
so.
I don't think you ever let it go because those are your most impressionable years. There's no way that if you've had scars then or if you've had a certain upbringing that has probably constrained you or kept you in a box, then you act out in different ways as you grow older.
Yeah. My question to you is when you see some people who, you feel maybe don't have the correct set of ethics, what's the one thing that sticks out to you but just puts you off?
I think a lack of integrity and a lack of loyalty are the two things that I don't stomach easily. I think it's very important regardless of your abilities, which obviously vary from person to person. The things that you have control over really are how much integrity you can display.
Like how many morals you have.
Just the integrity of being true to your job, being, not being corrupt. And when I say corrupt, I mean literally, of course, but also in letting corruption seep into your work and not really being true to what you set out to do in the first place. And secondly, a lack of loyalty to the people who've helped you along the way. Because, this is a collaborative business. And in fact, anything in life is really a collaborative
India is a
thing.
collaborative country.
Yeah, I think human beings have to be collaborative. There's no way to function without that. And if you've been given a leg up by people, if they've helped you along the way, there are people that you're beholden to, then, you need to display that loyalty to them through life. And that's always going to, number one, hold you in good stead. Number two is just the right way to be.
So this is like, the mental makeup side of it. Like, this is what the correct kind of upbringing can do for a person. My question to you is, in the career of a person, I personally feel that mentors play a huge role, especially early in your career. They say your first boss actually sets a tone for the rest of your career. So is it fair to say that Ronnie Screwwala was that person for you initially?
Ronnie's definitely been someone that I've looked up to, from the time that I was a kid, really, because, he came from South Bombay. He had a theatre background, which I did too. He entered into a space without any connections, was able to make a mark for himself, was able to do very unique and different and interesting and path-breaking things at a time when there was so much, sort of government control over the media. There were so many constraints that you might have had as an entrepreneur, but he broke out of that. He broke into the film industry and was able to really, create a niche for himself. So these are all things that I've admired all through. And having had the opportunity to actually see him at close quarters, even while I was growing up, because we came from the same sort of milieu, he was definitely a very inspirational figure in my life. And then later, of course, being my boss, it was a direct, sort of influence on me. So I've spent a long part of my career working with him, and those have been tremendous years. He's taught me a lot. But I would say that Alec Padamsee also was someone that I looked up to tremendously, because again, he was from the theatre, but he made advertising his livelihood, and he was able to merge his personal and professional life so beautifully. So he was someone, again, that I had the opportunity to actually be in plays with him, where he actually directed me, and I had a chance to actually be an actor in a few of his productions and see him from close quarters and the way that he operated. So he and Ronnie were the two people that I really, growing up, looked at as role models for where I'd like to see myself.
Speaking about you being in plays, if someone scans any of the interviews you've done on YouTube, you'll see a lot of the comments saying, "Inko to actor banna chahiye tha, ye itne good looking hai." Was that ever thought in your head? Because I know you grew up as a fan of the Hindi film industry.
Oh, I was a rabid fan. I was one of those kids who'd read Screen magazine and see trade figures at the age of 8 or 9. Read every film magazine I could get my hands on. If there was any opportunity to go for a movie shoot, I'd be like salivating. Was a completely, film obsessed, junkie growing up. And I did act quite a bit in theatre. I did a lot of theatre all through school and college. I think what I realized in college was that I'm more a producer than an actor. And that's probably comes from the fact that I enjoyed being involved in multiple projects simultaneously and being involved in every aspect of those productions when I was putting up plays in college. So I was the chairperson of the Dramatic Society in college, and that gave me a huge thrill, raising sponsorships to put the plays up, figuring out what your slate for the year is going to be. Do we have a comedy? Do we have a drama? Do we have a romance? Figuring out which directors we should use. How do we publicize the plays? So in a microcosmic way, I was actually doing what I'm doing today back in college. And I think that I realized more than acting or even directing, which I did too, gave me much more of a kick.
Wow, crazy. So do you somewhere feel that this was your internal calling? You're one of those lucky people who actually found their calling in life. That doesn't happen to everyone.
It happened to me quite late, I have to say. It wasn't like I grew up thinking I'm going to be a film producer. You want to be associated with the arts. You know that cinema and theatre probably are the two areas which you feel closest to. But if you don't literally want to be an actor only, then it's difficult, because the term film producer is not something you grow up knowing what does a film producer do. You grow up thinking that he's a person who puts the money into the film. You don't realize that actually the entire setup of a movie from start to finish, the way that it's envisioned, bringing all the artists on board, managing the logistics, you don't know that that's a job. So it was hard. It took a while for me to come to the realization that, this is the kind of job that actually I would love to do. It's easier for a cricketer or for an actor. At the age of 3 or 4, they're set. They know this is what I want. That's where I want to go. But for me, it was much more about wanting to be a media person. Someone who was associated with a medium that was able to impact people's hearts and minds. And I found that in cinema and in the theatre.
Got it. Coming back to your mentors again, Alec Padamsee, Ronnie Screwwala, what's like the one takeaway from each person that has stayed with you for the rest of your career?
I think the ability to dream big and then make that happen. In the when I worked with Alec, he used to say it's about converting ideas into action, and his thing was all about that. He'd be like, an idea, and Ronnie would say the same, and that's something that stayed with me quite a bit. An idea is only 10% of your work done. 90% is actually the operations of that idea, making that happen. But I think what I learned from them is never being worried about being seen as a madman and being seen as someone who's got just these crazy ideas and visions of what they want to do that has never been done before, and that people will scoff at you for even thinking that you can achieve, and then going out and doing them.
So there's a lot of people, including myself, who when they begin their media careers, they look at people like you and say, okay, that's somewhat where I want to go. You genuinely never felt that things will go this big, or did something like awaken the hunger inside you at say 22, 25? In your mid-20s?
There's a difference between having a sense of self-belief and actually knowing where things will go. I had a lot of self-belief. I have to say that that's something that I've been lucky.
From 22?
From actually ever since I can remember, there's been a fair amount of self-belief, and I would give all credit to my parents for that, because I think it's really that reinforcing and conditioning that you get as a child, that you can do whatever you set out to do, that helps you to be able to achieve it. But I don't think I would have been able to envision in which direction that would go. I knew I wanted to do things that would make an impact on people, but I didn't know what that would actually translate into.
Got it. What's life like now? At 45, great, you're in your dream career, everything's going well. Are you hungry? Are you great? I know you're grateful. I'm sure you're grateful. But what's your mindset like right now?
It's interesting to actually distill it down to what is it that you want to leave a mark on the world as at the time that you leave it. And if you think about it that way. And I think as you get to my age, you start thinking that you're at that halfway mark, and now what is the next halfway going to be able to do? What are you going to be able to achieve in the next half? Having garnered the experience, had all the failures and a few successes, along the way, what is it that you've learned from that you can now bring to practice? And I think for me, it's really about being able to create pieces of work that leave an impact on people's hearts and that are remembered long after one is gone. Now, whether that's a great movie, whether that's a wonderful series, whether that's a piece of theater, something that I'm able to help create and help bring to life, could be someone else's vision. It could be a vision that I have for it, that actually leaves behind something that, once one is gone. I think that's the broadest way to look at it, and that's really what I'd like to be able to do.
They say that content, films, web series, all these things determine the culture of like a country or the world. So I think that's what your vibe is about right now. You're trying to play your role in impacting culture in a way.
Yeah, and not as broad as saying that from at this point, it's really a personal journey. But I think when you look at it on a larger level, the impact that India can have on the world with the soft power that we wield is tremendous.
Can you explain that?
Down the years, the US has managed to make all things American very aspirational for the whole world. From McDonald's to Disneyland, Coke to hamburgers to the American way of life, Broadway. These are things that the whole world aspires to as being something that they want to be a part of. And that actually helps in raising the profile of the country as the preeminent dominating cultural power in the world. Now, Hollywood has managed to go into every country and decimate the local film industry and pretty much become the de facto film industry in that country. You have very few local language movies being made around the world. India is the one country in the world where we have a thriving local film industry and a culture of our own stars, our own stories, our own concepts. Hollywood hasn't managed to make a dent here beyond 10 to 20% of our revenues for the last 60 to 70 years or more. I think we should celebrate that. That's a massive cultural advantage that we have. We have a massive South Asian diaspora, across the world, Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Sri Lankans, around the world who love our content and love our cinema and love our culture. And I think if we're able to broaden that horizon and become an aspirational cultural force for the world, that actually helps raise the profile of the country. Tremendously. And I hope that the government, increasingly recognizes this. They have definitely shown signs of doing so and, helps the Indian cultural fraternity to be able to do that.
Yeah. So I strongly believe that because of the size of our population and the kind of education that's spreading because of things like YouTube, I feel that we're going to be living in a very different India in, say, as soon as 2040 or 2050. Very different. Do you think that the role reversal will happen where Bollywood will be impacting, the world in the way Hollywood is impacting the world today? Do you think that's going to happen?
I think it's bound to happen because we've got such a rich array of stories in our culture, whether it's the mythology or whether it's history, whether it's what's happening today in our culture to tell the world. I mean, if you just look at the example of a film like Dangal, right? When we made Dangal, we had no idea that it would do the sort of business that it did in a place like China.
Yeah.
Because Dangal is a film that is so local. You think it's about a little Haryanvi family, so culture specific, and the trials and tribulations that it goes through in the patriarch of the family realizing the importance of his daughters. But the fact that it could resonate in China means that actually what it takes is trying to be as local as possible, because those are the stories that will culturally resonate elsewhere, because they see some truth in it.
Yeah.
They see some authenticity and truth in it. The moment we try to reconstruct ourselves to fit what we think they will like, I think that's where we'll fail. We need to be very true to our own selves and what comes from us. And that's when I think people will see the truth of that.
Got it. Coming back to slightly more personal conversations, sir. What were your failures of your 20s that like set you up for your life? Because I personally believe 20s is just, and maybe life, but I just have perspective of being 26. What were the failures in your mid 20s which you're like, okay, that kind of helped me construct my mental makeup further?
There's so many to choose from. Where do I start?
Top three.
I'd say, I don't look at them as failures. I sort of look at them as learnings, because everything that you go through in life actually helps you moving forward. I'll start even earlier than that. When I took up commerce as a subject that, I wanted to study, I had no interest in commerce whatsoever. I was an art student all the way. Like, there was no question about it. But because I did fairly well in my 10th, the peer pressure around taking arts at that time was so intense. It was like only women take it. And if you're a failure, then you'll take. And I was like, but that's what I enjoy. I enjoy literature. I enjoy history. I enjoy, sociology. Those are the subjects that I think I gravitate towards. And the irony here is that my parents were actually encouraging me to take arts. And they were like, wow, that's what you're all about. But I think the peer pressure of wanting to fit in and wanting to be part of the crowd, also maybe not having any other role models in terms of an elder sibling to be able to go to who would be able to guide me in that direction, just made me follow the herd. And I took up commerce. While I loved Sydenham as a college, I had the greatest time there. I was part of the Dramatic Society. We had a wonderful extracurricular, sort of situation going. But I have to admit, I must have attended all of 20 lectures in 5 years. Literally. Yeah. And, you just got by. So that's 5 years of a wasteland of education. Then, of course, I'm very grateful that I got into Jamnalal Bajaj and did my MBA, but it was 2 more years of studying things that I didn't enjoy. It gave me the security of therefore getting a great job and being able to be positioned well in terms of, just your security in life in terms of financially. But it was definitely, so I regret my academic career.
Okay.
Those 7 years I spent studying things that I did not enjoy.
A lot of kids are watching this saying that, wait, I want to drop out. If Siddharth Roy Kapur is saying that, he didn't enjoy his academic career, I don't want to do this.
It's not about it's about doing what you really enjoy. I think I've been, very fortunate in, even despite that, being able to have found my way back into doing something that I do enjoy. Probably the journey from arts into movies would have been a different kind of journey. But who knows if that would have happened at all. This is all, 2020 hindsight. It's worked out in a way that I would have wanted, but I probably didn't spend those years studying something I enjoy. And my only advice, if I had any for, the younger generation, is you're spending those 7 crucial years of your 5 or 7, depending on whether you do a postgraduate degree or not. Just study subjects that you enjoy and that that you're good at and that you gravitate towards.
Because I feel that work ethics in life, and just having a vision kind of makes up for not having the appropriate degree in life. That's my perspective right now. According to the modern world, I feel that whatever you want to do in life, it is possible if you have some amount of self-awareness and just that promise to yourself, I will work hard.
No, and I think today the other thing is that for your generation and the younger generation, the vocational courses available today, not having to follow the straight and narrow arts, commerce, science that we had to, are tremendous. So take advantage of that, because you can actually be able to, take your academic journey in a direction that today is much more specific rather than just those 3 broad streams.
So keeping entrepreneurship on one side, okay, let's not talk about Roy Kapoor films. Let's talk about your corporate career. What did you do correct to break out of the crowd? Why did people promote you to become like, the chief of marketing of things and the CEO of Disney, MD of Disney, things like that? What did you do right? Like, what did you do to break out?
That's a tough question for me to answer myself, but I'll take a stab at saying what I tried to do. What I tried to do in my career was, number one, work really hard. And I guess that happened because I was enjoying it. I was really I was doing exactly what I wanted to be doing when I joined UTV. That was actually at the age of 30 when I moved from Star TV and moved to UTV, because it was movies. And of course, it was television and animation and all those other things as well. But it was a culture I enjoyed. It was the spirit of entrepreneurship that I enjoyed around me. And I just worked flat out.
Even though you
Really
weren't the
hard.
entrepreneur.
Yeah, because I think what Ronnie managed to do was foster culture of entrepreneurship where you could debate decisions with him quite freely. He'd sometimes change his mind based on a strong argument. He would encourage you to take risks. He actually valued, risk-taking abilities. So we were sort of entrepreneurs within the company. Of course, he was the entrepreneur, and of course, our monthly paycheck came in at the end of the month. But it was almost like making you feel like a sense of ownership over the organization, which I really valued, and that helped.
That just kept you working.
It did, and I think the harder you work, the luckier you get.
100%.
That I think honestly is the one philosophy that I've taken away from my years in this industry, and I think it's true for any that luck I give very less importance to, because I believe, sure, definitely there are sometimes factors that work beyond your control that put you in a certain position, but I think if you keep working really hard and with integrity, the likelihood of you being in that spot at that time is that much higher. So I'd say if there was one thing, then it would be hard work.
Okay. I feel we're from two different generations. You're like one generation before mine. And they call my generation the burnout generation because there's too much social media, too many options to do so many things that you kind of get confused about मैं क्या करूँ life में. There's a lot of people with mental health issues my age. People who are 26 who probably not found their vibe in life. And they're not able to actually work hard right now. So what's your message to them other than the fact that choose a career that you'll enjoy? Possibly they've done that, but they're still kind of struggling with putting in the work.
To start with, I have a tremendous amount of compassion for this generation, because it's true that it is bombarded by messages 24/7 of all kinds about aspirational lives that they think other people are living, and the peer pressure is tremendous. Probably every generation feels that it encounters that to some extent, but I think it's even more amplified as the years are going by because of social media. So there aren't any easy answers here. I do think, and it sounds trite and it sounds cliched, but the one piece of advice I can give is to just follow your heart, because peer pressure can be so crippling and it can be so misleading. The aura that's created around imaginary lifestyles that you believe people are living, just know that that's not true. Just, because
those are the highlights of someone else's
those
life.
are the highlights of some, or those are the curated, the curated images of their lives that they hope that if they put out, they'll actually feel good about themselves. Probably not realizing that they're impacting generations of people who are seeing those and imagining that their lives are so much worse than someone else's.
Yeah.
But you've got to have compassion for everyone in this equation.
Yeah.
No one's doing it to hurt someone else, but invariably that seems to be what's happening. But I think it's just about following your heart in terms of, I think if we just listen to that little voice inside us, we know what we really want to be doing, and we know the life we really want to be living. It's about just pursuing that and not getting distracted by these imaginary lives that you think everyone else is living.
Have you dealt with any mental health issues?
Not in a way where I can say that they've been crippling or they've been debilitating, thankfully. But we all go through periods of time when we feel low and we feel, depressed.
Hold up. Even right now? Like right now at the age of 45?
For sure. Absolutely. I don't think that ever goes away. And if it does, then you're clearly closing yourself or numbing yourself to your feelings, because it's unnatural not to feel low or to feel depressed. You have a flop, you feel depressed. You're not able to cast a film, you feel depressed. Something doesn't go your way in terms of a script not working out like you wanted to, you feel depressed. Obviously, things at home happen, fights within families, you feel depressed. Those are not things that with age or experience or wealth can never go away. And don't imagine that they do, because you'll be imagining a future that's quite different to the reality, and you'll be quite disappointed with that. But I think the recognition, frankly, that I've had also, that sometimes people can have clinical reasons why they're feeling a certain way, which are not related to what's happening around them, but related to what's going on inside them. And then for people to recognize that, that's not something that I have experienced, but I know people around me who have, and I know of people who have. And I think earlier it was just looked on as being they're in a funk, or they're in a mood, or they're moody, or they are, there's nothing wrong with them. I don't know why they're always cribbing. Those are things that could still exist with some people. It's not black or white, but there are some people who are, despite themselves and despite whatever else they might be going through, feeling that way because there is something chemically happening inside them that's making them feel like that. And it's frankly a realization I've also had over the last few years. It's not something that you could know if it's not happened to you. But I would advise anyone who's going through that to actually seek professional help, because there's nothing wrong with it. You're treating other parts of your body the way that you would in a scientific manner. Your brain is as much an organ of your body as any other. Why would you not treat that if there's a problem?
Yeah. So I want to talk about self-doubt. It's something that YouTubers see a lot, social media stars see a lot. The way you said that, maybe a flop kind of messes with your mood. I'm no producer, but I run my own mini YouTube channel. And if we have a piece of content that we are expecting a lot out of, and the views don't come in and people don't respond well, definitely affects me. But what I've figured over time is, I've come out of this funk in the past as well. And I have to just kind of retouch that kind of formula that helped me in the past. Is that a parallel to what's happening with you right now? That if there's a flop, you do get that little bit of self-doubt, but you're like, okay, I'm old enough now to deal with it.
No, actually what I do whenever there's a setback, it could be a flop, it could be something not working like I wanted, it could be personal, it could be professional, is I try to go back to source. I mean, one is I've learned to acknowledge it. I've learned not to brush it under the carpet and to just tell myself you can go on, there's no issue, and to block myself to it. I've learned to experience it, let myself feel that way, allow myself to grieve whatever it is that I'm feeling, number one. And number two, what always helps me is really going back to sources of inspiration once again to motivate me.
Like
so
what?
It could be a book. It could be a book about someone I admire. It could be a biography, or it could be an autobiography of someone that I know will give me the motivation, because I know that they'll have spoken about situations like that they've gone through and come through. It could be watching a great movie that I've always been inspired by. It could be just going off on a short break. But allow yourself that and be kind to yourself in that way, because it's only that'll get you through it and then move you forward. And I think this only happens over time and age and experience, where you realize what it is that works for you to draw you out of a situation. But I think the biggest thing is to acknowledge it to start with. Because very often we're taught to just dust yourself off and pick yourself up and move on. That's great. But do that only when you've dealt with whatever it is that you've experienced, rather than just brushing it under the carpet, because it's there in some recess of your brain and it's going to come back to bite you at some point if you don't deal with it.
Can I ask you something personal?
Sure.
When was the last time you cried?
I cry all the time in movies.
Oh, okay.
I'm a very easy crier. I'm a very, very easy crier. So I watched a screening of a film last night. I can't tell you which one because it's unreleased, and I cried. So yeah, last night.
But does life ever make you cry?
Oh yeah, for sure.
What?
For sure.
What specifically?
I think if there are situations with loved ones that you're going through that you feel helpless in, it could be anything. If you're going through a period of time in your life when you're feeling low about something, but I've been someone who's actually with my near and dear ones worn my heart on my sleeve quite a bit. So I don't find any issue with letting it out there and crying when you need to. You can do it in your own bathroom in front of the sink, or you can do it with someone that you trust and love and care about. But I think it's important to deal with sadness and to deal with a low period and give yourself that liberty.
Yeah. Because it collects inside you otherwise.
It does.
That pain.
It does.
My question to you is coming back to those movies and those content pieces that help you. Could you name a couple of books, a couple of movies, and hopefully a couple of YouTube channels that you watch?
So I'm really, I have to say that I'm not a digital native. What's the opposite of being a digital native? A Luddite, I think.
Rookie.
A rookie. So yeah, I mean, I watch a lot of YouTube videos, but I have to say I don't follow any YouTube channels. I will be following yours after this
Thank
podcast.
you, sir.
But movies, so many. So Sholay, probably Cinema Paradiso. These are films like I guess Cinema Paradiso is about the movies and about just it's Italian, so there's a lot of very open emotion the way that we like it in our films. That's a film that can get me laughing and crying every time I see it. Sholay, just because I think it's the best Hindi film ever made.
Why do you say that?
I think it had everything that a Hindi film could quintessentially have. It's the perfect, if you had to tell someone, if the term Bollywood had to be put in a genre and you had to tell someone what's the quintessential Bollywood film, then it would be that. It had great music, it had action, it had emotion, it had romance, it had a wonderful villain, it had great heroes, it had laughter, it had tears, it had everything that you could probably ask for. And that's a film that, probably inspired me the most growing up. Then films like Amar Akbar Anthony. I'm a complete Bachchan, fiend, as you can tell, and most people of my generation are. But, any Amitabh Bachchan movie from the 70s can get me going. Books, I'd say probably books about, people from the movies. So there's a book called The Boy Wonder, which is about Irving Thalberg. He was the Boy Wonder producer in Hollywood in the 20s and 30s. He founded MGM with Louis Mayer. Okay. And he died at 37. But after making some of the most incredible movies of all time. Then I read this book called The Kid Stays in the Picture about Robert Evans, who was a legendary producer. He made Godfather, Chinatown, Rosemary's Baby, some wonderful movies. And just about, when you read about him, you realize that people in the movies go through similar things regardless which part of the world they're in. The ups, the downs, the incredible highs, the incredible lows. So these are the type of books I would read, or movies I would watch at a time when maybe one is feeling like in need of inspiration. But there are so many.
Yeah. So what was the one single moment of your career where you look at it and you're like, okay, that was my lowest moment?
Career-wise? The irony is, I think it was when I was with Star TV in Hong Kong. I was actually at that time the youngest vice president in Star TV in Asia. I had this, what people would think would be a dream posting to Hong Kong, wonderful city, all that was great. But I genuinely felt completely underutilized. And that was not the fault of the company. It was probably what the situation was at that point of time in terms of, there not being that much happening at the head office versus what was happening in the other areas. And I felt completely underutilized. I'd have literally 3 to 4 hours of work a day, and the rest of time I'd just have to spend whiling away. I had this wonderful large office overlooking the the Hong Kong skyline. It was great. It was everything on paper. It ticked all the boxes, but I probably felt the lowest I felt in my career then. And that's when I was sort of interacting with Ronnie. I'd stayed in touch with him over the years since the time that I did my internship at UTV. And he said, why don't you come back? And we've just greenlit a film called Rang De Basanti. And I'm going hell for leather with this movie studio called UTV Motion Pictures, plan to do a lot, come back and head marketing for the studio and for the rest of the company. And I think I was literally on the next flight back to Bombay. And I was 30. And I'd say that was probably the best professional decision of my life that I've taken.
Wow, crazy. Coming to current mood in life once again. I love playing ping pong with your mind especially. So coming to your current state of mind, this is something I want to know on a very brotherly level. We spoke about crying and the things that make you cry. Personally, at this stage of my life, in my 20s, I feel like my 20s are going to set me up for the rest of my life. And I kind of always look at myself as the leader of this organization of like BeerBiceps, Monk Entertainment. And the one thing that gets me teared up occasionally, maybe like once a month or something, is a little bit of the burden of leadership, both in terms of the Monkey and BeerBiceps leader, and then the 5 million people following on social media, because there is a lot of responsibility attached to your face, to your identity. So in terms of leadership, what's your advice that will kind of ease the process for potential leaders of the future?
Again, I think it's so individual and so driven by how you are as a person that I can't say there's one size fits all advice for someone. But I'd say probably find opportunities not to take yourself so seriously. Find people around you who will joke around with you, probably make fun of you, indulge in self-deprecating humor, friends that you've known from way back probably who treat you like a kid, and you can have silly fun with them.
Yeah.
So just sort of let off steam in that way, because I think it's really important, especially when you're in a position of leadership, because you're feeling like you're being watched all the time for your reactions, for the way that you behave. And I think it's important to give yourself that pressure cooker situation to ease that at times, and spend some time with people with whom you can just be completely your silly self and be as stupid as you want to be, crack ridiculous jokes, and just sort of have a
Stay
drink and
connected to the inner
to
child.
that. Because then I think you'll come back refreshed, and then you can be the role model that you want to be to the people around you.
Because I guess if you're put on that pedestal, you must be doing something right. Like,
For sure. And it is true that that the way that you behave with people is being looked at as a signal for the culture of the organization. And it's true. You can't deny that.
Yeah.
So you are under scrutiny all the time if you choose to be in the position of a leader. And you should enjoy that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that should become your whole life. It's very important to allow yourself that time outside to be able to be the person that you just want to be when you let your hair down.
yeah. So they say that, maybe the last 20 years were about all the science degrees. Or I'd say the last 50 years were about all the science degrees. They make the big money. They make the big businesses, all that. And they say the next 50 years are going to be about the creative industry, where creative professionals and creativity is going to be like the highly monetized human trait. So my question to you, and this is something I've experienced, as much as I love my whole organization, I love each member, there's a deep family culture here. Leading creative people is its own game. It's easy to lead business people. Creative people all work out of a place of emotion. So the whole game changes. And I know that this is something you've experienced as well. So specifically when it comes to leading creative people, setting up a big creative business, what is your advice?
I think just dealing with each person in the way that you believe will bring the best out of them, and having a horses for courses approach in the way that you deal with them. You'd find some creative people who are extremely organized and extremely methodical and extremely and want to be dealt with in that manner, and like being treated as if they were working in a bank. They could be the most creative people on earth, but they enjoy deadlines, they enjoy method. Their production runs like a well-oiled machine, and then you deal with them in the manner that they like to be dealt with. But you could have some who are complete creative mavericks and who are just completely like to run with the flow, are stream of consciousness thinkers, will not put anything down on paper, want everything to be unplanned so that it can be spontaneous and live in the moment. And then you got to deal with them in that manner too. But as a person who's running the ship and who's responsible for actually commitments, you need to then ensure that you're able to build a world around them which gives them the chance to be as creative in the way they want to be, but still within a framework that makes sense for you.
100%.
So you can't let them run wild. And I'm saying all this from trial and error.
Yeah, I'm
Right?
sure.
So don't presume that this is something I knew the day I was born. It definitely is not. It's actually something that's come out of many, as you put it, failures, right? That have made me learn that it's important to be able to deal with creative people, not in a one-size-fits-all approach at all.
Yeah. That's actually something one of my biggest idols, LeBron James, also says, that for each guy in his team, he's a big NBA player. He needs to learn them individually before actually getting the best out of them. So know your team really
For
well.
sure.
I think it boils down to that.
Yeah.
My next question to you is, great, this is your family. This is your, leadership advice. Sir, honestly, from the outside, you're one of like the biggest people in the Indian film industry. And I'm sure that comes with a lot of bootlickers like chasing you. I'm sure a lot of people like suck up to you and all that. 2 questions. First question is, how do you identify who's just being nice to me to get something out of me? And the second question is that what actually, what makes you decide things about a person in terms of, okay, I'll give this person an opportunity and I won't give that person an opportunity?
I don't enjoy yes men at all. So I enjoy someone who is willing to put themselves out there and have a debate, is willing to have a different point of view, be that an employee, be that a writer, be that a director, be that an associate on a business level. I think we all have a pretty good, bullshit radar built into us, which can tell if someone is agreeing to everything that you say, accepting everything at face value just because then it's quite clear that they're in it for the ride rather than to actually be able to have constructive debate and argument and move forward. So as you, again, with age and experience, you probably are able to detect people like that quite early. And the only thing would be is, don't brush them off in a way which will be hurtful. Just be, respectful, but in your mind know that, these are probably not the people that you want to associate with professionally.
And what gives you the green light on a person?
I think, again, exactly that, where someone is debating the issue, they aren't making it an ego issue, they're making it about the issue, right? So, like, I'll just give you an example. So a writer, for example, you can tell very easily if a writer is close to any feedback because then they just shut down. You can also tell very easily if a writer is accepting every piece of feedback, then you know that then there might be a problem. Or otherwise, you're so brilliant that and you should not presume that. But sometimes when a writer is saying, that's a great point, and incorporating it, but then arguing quite vociferously with you about a point that they are quite clear on why they've done and are able to convince you about that or are able to get convinced. Those are the sort of people that you want to collaborate with because you know that it's all about the work. It's not about ego. It's not about full acceptance of the person who's paying the bills.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's not either extreme, which is great.
Yeah.
So so that's just the example of a writer. But I'd say therefore every person that you're dealing with, if they are having a constructive negotiation or argument with you about an issue instead of about things extraneous to that, those are the people that you want to collaborate with.
Got it. So Rang De Basanti was what, 2005?
2006 is when we released it, Jan 2006.
So 13 years. And
yeah,
you worked with a lot of, say, Bollywood stars. Where there's stars, there might be tantrums or, there might be that little glam quotient. I'm sure you had some experiences dealing with that, where someone's, whatever, kind of stardom has gone to the head. As the guy on the business side, how do you deal with like things like that? Or as the leader of the industry, what's your experience dealing with that?
I think two things. One is that if you can just remove yourself from the situation sometimes and look at it from the outside, it helps. It just gives you some perspective. Number one. Number two, have some compassion for the person and then deal with them in that way.
Put yourself in their shoes.
Put yourself in their shoes. Sometimes you might put yourself in their shoes and say, why am I behaving so crazy? But I think it's about understanding where they're coming from and trying to alleviate, because, if someone's behaving like that, it actually comes from insecurity. Yeah, when you think about it deeply. If there was security, they would not feel the need to behave in that manner. So to get to the heart of what that insecurity might be, and if it's in your power to address it, then address that rather than dealing with the symptoms of that insecurity, which is this behavior.
Got it. Like, can you give an example of a story without taking names where you were just like, okay, this is how this industry is? What just like opened up your eyes about, okay, I'll have to deal with things like this.
There are many, actually. There are many. There have been times that one has been threatened. There have been times when one has been not literally abused, but, shouted at. But I think it just really depends on the people that you're interacting with and how much you want to, what you think that you can do to be able to have a collaboration that makes sense. A good way that I like to look at it also is that we tend to presume that relationships are friendlier or more casual or more informal because we're in this business. If you're working in a manufacturing company or in a bank, you would have colleagues with you, you'd be collegial with them at work, and you would both collaborate and get work done. Our problem is that we spend 24/7 together. We're interacting in informal settings. We're having a drink and working. So everyone tends to believe that means you must be friends. I think don't apply the same principles that you would apply to a friendship, to a relationship with a colleague. Understand that you're in this in order to get something done, right? If along the way a friendship develops, that's great. But you are colleagues and you're professional colleagues. So try to deal with, again, just focus on the issue rather than focusing on the behavior.
Got it.
That's what I've always tried to do.
Understood. Very practical approach, I feel this is. I
think it's important as a producer to be pragmatic and to just try to figure out what your end goal is to achieve, to make a great movie. Or to make a great piece of work, to deliver it on budget, on time, in quality, give it the best platform possible. Anything that impedes that process, deal with without trying to let emotions come into play. At times, it's important to let emotions come into play also. But pick those times and let that come from a position of not having any other logical response to the situation other than that.
So when someone's in your kind of driving seat, I feel that you have a lot of power to create, especially actors or actresses' careers. You know, you can. That's how people perceive like the old school orthodox Bollywood producer. So I'm without asking you details about that. I want to ask you, ki, what are the traits you see in, say, a young upcoming actor, actress, and you're like, okay, this person can be a potential dark horse. I'm sure that the path has its own challenges and all that. But what's the basic mental makeup that you look for, other than obviously being a good actor or good dancer? Like on a human level, what do you look for?
I think, obviously things like hard work and commitment and, dedication and all that.
Professionalism.
Yeah, professionalism. Just generally being someone that everyone wants to work with because of how they are. But there is that X factor that we can't deny. This is show business. This is the film industry. This is all about that indefinable quality that draws people to someone.
Magnetism.
Yeah. And I think other than just pure talent, it's important to be able to recognize that. And not everyone has got the ability to do so. I don't think any of us can claim to have a 100% track record when it comes to that ever. But it's just taking a chance on someone who might not be the best looking person, might not have the best dancing skills, but might be someone that you're seeing some quality in that just makes them endearing on screen, and the camera loves them, and they're someone that just shines through whenever they're on screen. So it's indefinable. It is indefinable.
Other than this magnetism, what have Shah Rukh Khan, Ranveer Singh, Salman Khan, these guys at the top, like the A+ listers, what have they done correct in their lives?
I think they've taken chances. The films that have worked for them have been ones on which they've taken chances.
Risks.
And they've taken risks. They've been able to put their talent out there in a way that actually exposes them to failure. And those are the times that sometimes they've had their massive, successes. Sometimes they've failed as well. But they've backed their own conviction and backed their own talent to do things that probably others wouldn't do.
Got it. So when anyone speaks to you, or anyone with a very complex mind who's had a lot of experiences. So I feel like one trait that comes along with having a complex mind is also being a perpetual learner. And I see that a lot in you, that you're still at that stage where you want to learn. I remember the first time I met you at your office, you asked me a lot about social media because it was like a new world for you. What is the next 10 years like for you? What do you want to learn next? Do you plan it like that? For example, right now I'm in a stage of my life where I want to learn personal finances really well, because YouTubers' careers are a little bit volatile. I don't know where my future is. I just want to secure myself. So I want to learn personal finances inside out. So could you give me one subject which you're thinking of as, okay, this is what I need to lock in on over the next 10, 15 years?
I think probably consumption patterns in this new media landscape that we have today. The films that are working at the box office are so different from the ones that worked 5 years or 7 years ago. People's attitudes have changed because of the anytime, anywhere push content that they have access to. They consume the shorter versions and the shorter formats that today are working much more than the longer formats. The fact that people are maybe in the future going to look at cinema as a very rarefied special experience in terms of going to the theatre, rather than it being something that when we grew up, it was just the only game in town. So just being able to be up to speed with that, and then hopefully being a few steps ahead of it, because as a creator of content, whether it be on any platform, you need to be able to have some sort of insight into what people might want to watch 3 months or 6 months or a year down the line. And just trying to be ahead of the curve there. It's tough because you've got to today be savvy about technology. You've got to understand the way that people are interacting with content much more than you did in the past.
It's changing people's perceptions of content. When people seeing TikTok or something, a lot of the public is basically enjoying very different things than they were enjoying, say, 20 years back.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. The fact that 18 seconds, right?
Yeah.
18 to 20 seconds can actually tell a story.
Yeah.
However, one thread that story might be, but you can tell stories. And the fact that therefore people are open to that and their attention spans have dwindled. So you've got to be able to catch people's attention with shorter formats of content. And therefore, if you're choosing to still do long form, it better be great. It better be something so compelling that people are willing to put away their cell phones, which today have become a lifeline, and just stare at a screen for 2 hours.
is the world of Bollywood looking at the world of social media and saying, what's up there, man? Who are those guys? Like,
Well, we already have a lot of the front of screen talent which uses social media very well.
no, I'm not.
Right?
I'm not asking that.
You're asking about the producers and the directors.
Producers, directors, actors, are they looking at YouTubers or TikTokers and saying that these guys can enter our industry, or there might
For
be
sure.
some
Absolutely.
clash?
Absolutely.
Even like producers are looking at these.
Yeah, because I mean, earlier a celebrity had to be known around the country for them to be a celebrity. But today, a producer could well be someone being mobbed and have no idea who they are. They're being mobbed at a mall, and you're like, you feel really out of touch because you're like, that is a social media sensation. You don't even know who they are. And they clearly have great amount of appeal to a section of the audience. So I think it's important for the more structured industries to look at the world of social media. Number one, learn from it. Number two, be able to get some of that talent into what they're doing.
Okay. Is there fear or insecurity on, like, say, the actor actresses end?
See, a creative business is an insecure business, right?
So true.
I think that's a given.
Yeah.
So insecurity is an inherent part of what we do because what we do is so non-binary, right? There is so much subjectivity. There is so much of smoke and mirrors. There's so much of will it or won't it, that you can't help but be insecure.
Yeah.
I think it's about managing your own insecurity in a way that is productive rather than, destructive.
Yeah.
But when it comes to these worlds, I'm sure there's insecurity. I think we need to look at it as an opportunity rather than be insecure about
100%.
it. It's just opened the door to so much new talent around the country which had no platform to expose itself earlier. So why should we be insecure about it? Let's use it.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, let's kind of dial it back a little bit. Get out of like the professional conversations. Again, coming to you, you're 45. I'm sure a lot of people actually look at you. A lot of other producers will look at you as a blueprint. Some people consider you competition. So do you also feel that kind of, I won't say insecurity, but that a little bit of, okay, what's happening there? Like, do you have a sense of competition at all?
The sense of competition is more about, wow, I wish that script had come to me, or I wish I'd made that film. It's much more wanting to have been associated with great work, and therefore feeling a bit of a twinge about, why didn't I think of that? Or why didn't my team think of that? Or why didn't we come up with that before they did? That's the sort of competition. And I think that's pretty healthy. It's good to feel that way, because if you don't, then obviously you're living in your own bubble and preaching to your own choir and being quite, secure in yourself and being a little delusional about what's going on around you.
And I'm dead sure you've seen people go down because of that.
It does happen, because very often you can insulate yourself so completely from what's going on, thinking that you have all the answers, that you become a little bit, sort of redundant in your thinking. And therefore, then when you're trying to do something for the audience of today, it becomes so irrelevant.
As a person right now, as a man, what are your challenges?
I think breaking myself out of of the medium in which I've been born and brought up, to be able to embrace the technological changes that are happening today and be able
Social
to
media?
engage, to probably be able to engage with it much more. I'm not on social media.
Yeah.
I'm definitely engaged with it in terms of I know what's going on it, but I'm not an active participant, and I don't plan to be. But I have to find a happy medium between the two, between not being a participant, but still not being unexposed to the way that the younger generation is thinking, the experiences that they're having, the world in which they're living, because otherwise one won't be able to create work that will resonate with them.
I have two solutions for you. Either you go down the Kareena Kapoor route and be a low-key social media user, or you just come down to Monk Entertainment and we'll help you out with that.
I think the latter is a great idea.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I've kind of, dug up everything there is to dig from your professional world. I want to ask you about relationships. And again, more of a brotherly conversation. So like, you seem to have been like a huge hustler in your 20s, early 30s. I'm sure you still are. But did you have time for something like relationships then? Because you also, I know that romantic movies are your go-to. So you are a romantic somewhere in your heart, and so am I. And, in this whole game of YouTube, running 2 YouTube channels, running a company, thinking of new businesses, I feel like I'm maybe, I won't say losing out on that, but there is a part of me that has to sacrifice there. Because if you want to do big things, sacrifice is a part of it. So what was your romantic life like in your 20s and early 30s like?
Well, I mean, without getting into any details, it was one where I guess you live and learn. right? There are times when you give more importance to your professional life than to your personal life, and therefore your personal life suffers. There are times when, I mean, but it could be that you're giving as much importance and it suffers anyway, you know. So it really depends from person to person. I'd say if you can find a balance, that would be great. But the less time you go out looking for something, the more it's likely to happen organically. I think it's always best when it happens organically. I'm a little bit convinced about that. Yeah. Rather than seeking it out very actively, because that's likely to be a little more short term than things that happen organically.
Early on in your teenage, early 20s, have you ever had your heart broken?
Yeah.
Okay. In college?
In school, actually. But those were really, I mean, you know, we all go through that in school. Yeah. You like someone, they don't like you back, your heart breaks, and you think it's the worst thing on earth. You think it's the sky will fall down on you and life is over. But I think it's great that at every point in life that we go through, our experiences are as real to us as they would be today. In fact, even more so, because we haven't seen enough of life to know that life will go on. So those heartbreaks are probably even, I mean, much more intense than those that happen to you later.
So you're a businessman who's got a romantic side, and wherever there's this kind of cocktail, I also feel that your partner, Vidya Balan, is an emotional anchor for you, especially for your work. So could you elaborate a little bit on that?
I think it's great that we have each other because we know the business and we know the world that we come from. I can't imagine what it might have been to be with someone who didn't understand the daily ups and downs of what one goes through. And therefore, there's a shorthand between us where things don't even need to be said, where we understand. And if we know the sort of day someone's had, then you get it. You don't need to try to empathize with it, you actually do. And I think that's great. We've been very lucky, I think, in that respect, to be able to be with someone who's from the same industry and is going through the same things at the same time. So in that sense, I think for sure.
Got it. If you don't want to talk about it, feel free to just say, shut up, Ranveer. But being a romantic at heart, could you just give us like a quick, story of like what happened? Like, what's your love story?
No, so Vidya and I actually met on the sidelines of No One Killed Jessica. We were doing a film together, and one thing led to another. I'm quite private that way, so I shall not reveal more than that. But but it happened, like I said, really organically and very very naturally. We got to know each other, and it just one thing led to another. So it was great. I think it's something that we probably both needed at that time. And so far so good.
Okay. Like what specifically, as a guy again, what told you that, okay, this is the one?
It's hard to say whether there was that one moment when one got to know. It just happened gradually over a period of time. But like I said, I think there was so much commonality in our own upbringing probably, and both of us having come into the industry from the outside and having had to work our way into it, that we could understand each other quite well. And we knew that we were privileged to be in the position that we were in, because there are many people who aspire to have come into this business, and we had the chance to actually be there and to be as deeply involved as we are. And we both really valued that. And it was not, and I think the work ethic is similar. The amount of sort of commitment we both have to work, and therefore the understanding about why the other maybe is so involved and so intensely driven into something at a certain point of time to the exclusion of everything else can also be understood.
Yeah. So sir, considering the fact that you have such a complex head, which I'm coming to again, I'm sure you thought of this. What is like the makeup of a good relationship? Like what creates a good relationship? Because what I've been reading a lot lately, and this is a mistake I've made in the recent past, which is that a lot of young people go from 0 to 100 like very fast in relationships. Is it true that you take it gradually, one step at a time? I'm sure that that's an aspect of it, but what are the other aspects of it for you?
I'd say probably on a long-term basis, it's friendship. It's being great friends. Because you should be able to really get along with the person, because you're going to have to spend a lot of time together for many, many years to come. And I think if you don't enjoy each other's company and continue to, can laugh and be silly and be inane and be also deep and soppy and all those things with each other, and be able to keep sharing as time goes by. Some people share less, some people share more, but just accepting that about each other, maybe hoping to try to draw the other person, if they don't share that much, into sharing more. then that makes for a great relationship. So if you ask for one thing, I'd say it's a deep friendship.
Okay. Is it
over
true?
time.
Is it true that love fades and partnerships last?
I'd actually say no. I'd say love builds, because I think what fades is probably the intensity of when you first get together, right? Because then it's all about getting to know each other. It's
fiery.
And it's the two of you don't know each other that well, so it's all about discovering each other. But over time, I think there's a deep love that builds, and I think like I've seen it with my parents. They've had a pretty volatile marriage, but they had a love marriage, and they met when my dad was 22, my mom was 18, and they've been together now for more than 50 years. And being the eldest son, I've seen the ups and downs in their relationship, but I've seen that what's kept them together is friendship. And that friendship has led to their love building more and more over the years. They know each other inside out. They know each other's strengths and weaknesses completely. And they're just great friends. They can still laugh, together.
Do you feel that relationships require work, or is it like an organic process that just happens?
It shouldn't feel like work. I think as soon as it starts feeling like work, then something's wrong somewhere, and you can work on it then. But I think it requires attention. Like don't take it for granted. And here I'm sounding like a love guru or something.
No, go for it.
I have to say I've had more, more error than success in this department. But I'd say it's probably about just not taking for granted, and we're all guilty of it from time to time. But as soon as you realize that, and then you realize what you would be without it, is when you'll stop and you won't take it for granted.
100%. So what's a day in your life like right now, as like the top Hindi film producer? What's happening?
It's exciting. I mean, some days are busier than others, but it could veer from a team meeting, brainstorming on all the projects that we have in development, onto a script narration, onto probably a meeting with some partners that we're working on something with, like sort of business associates, onto probably an actor meeting, maybe a director meeting, sitting with writers and brainstorming on a script. It's really quite varied in that sense. And, when there's a film release, obviously it's that much more intense. When you're working on pre-production, it's maybe a little bit less. So it depends from time to time.
More stress around film releases?
Yeah. For sure, because everyone's nervous, everyone's on tenterhooks. You want to know what the audience is going to think. You're hoping you've given the film the right platform. But I think over time, one has learned to know that that's how it's going to be.
Have you ever experienced meditation?
I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't. I have to admit I haven't. My mother's deeply into it, but no, I haven't actually.
Okay.
I know you have.
Yeah, deeply.
Yeah.
Make content about it. So I'm kind of forced to like dive into the world the way you dive into films. Do you still go back to your parents with questions or with doubts about career, things like that?
I share a lot with them, but I probably don't go into doubts about career, etc. Because that's something that, when you have a spouse, you've got brothers to share that with, who maybe understand the world a little bit more. I don't feel it's fair at my age to burden my parents with those issues. They'd love to be burdened with them because they enjoy that being shared with them. I try not to if I can help it, because I think at this stage it's important for them to enjoy life and just have this time to themselves.
How does life like change in your 40s?
It depends on what stage of life you're at. I mean, for us, we don't have kids at this point. So we're really focused on our work right now. We try to, spend time together whenever we can, go off on breaks and, holidays, spend time with friends, spend time with family. I think it's what it would be. I can't think of how different it would be in my 40s versus my 30s. I honestly don't see that much of a difference. In my 20s, I was probably still trying to find what it is that I actually wanted to do.
And there was a lack of work-life balance?
There was. Okay. I'd say in my 30s, there was probably a little bit, in my early 30s, there's probably a little bit of a lack of work-life balance.
Because you were trying
I was still learning. I was still trying. I was still, a bit in a new world, trying to figure it out. Therefore, working myself to the bone, I'd say. Trying to understand what it was all about, because every day was a new experience. You have all kinds of characters thrown at you, and you've got to sink or swim.
Yeah.
So it was exciting, but it was also all consuming.
How do you maintain that work-life balance now at this stage?
It's become easier to do so, because I think when one is an entrepreneur, one can plan things in a way where you block that time out that you require. It doesn't always work out, but your time is probably your own more to that extent. But it doesn't, I mean, it's a constant seesaw. It keeps going one way or the other. The other way to look at it is, do you need to separate work and personal life completely, or is there a way to seamlessly integrate them in a way that you have a work day? If you've got something personal going on through the day, you go out and do it and come back. And then if you've got something work related, when you've got your personal time, you work around it. If you try to segregate them too distinctly, you'll always fall short of the standards you're trying to set for yourself. Because I think in today's environment, it's unrealistic to imagine that you can shut yourself off after 6 p.m. and switch on again at 10 a.m.
Especially in this city.
In this city and in the business that we're in. Yeah. I mean, we are dealing with creative people. We're dealing with people who don't necessarily operate on the, sunrise and sunset situation. You're dealing with deadlines. You're dealing with things like that. So it's just about working around it rather than trying to set yourself to an impossible standard.
So, because you have an analytical mind, because you're a perpetual learner, a part of that is kind of analyzing yourself also. So my question to you is, what do you hate about yourself? Because there is always that one element. Hate's a strong word, but what do you like, what are you not comfortable
Probably
with?
The amount I yo-yo in my weight. I grew up a really fat kid. Okay. I was 90 kgs in the 7th standard. So I literally was, I was, everyone called me Motu. And
is that still like an issue?
It's still an issue in terms of the amount I fluctuate. So I'm on a constant diet.
Okay.
And anyone who knows me knows this about me. Okay. It's a perpetual diet. I'm a sucker for the new diet fad of the week or the month or the year. Yeah. And I have the ability to lose and put on weight both very easily. Yeah. And therefore the amount that I'm able to fluctuate is quite intense. Yeah. But I do think it would be great for me to be able to be, like a lot of people around me, a steady weight for decades on end. That would be something I'd aspire to.
Yeah, I feel it's also a Punjabi genetics. I connect with you on that.
It probably level. Is. I think food is I live to eat rather than eat to live. 100%. So...
Yeah, I know that about you. Yeah. I've been in, for meetings with you, and I've seen that you enjoy food just as much as I do.
I do.
And then that's what also kind of gave me a little bit of comfort to talk to you ki apne bhai jaisa hai. So one thing that helped me personally on this whole weight and loving food battle is intermittent fasting. Firstly, like just starving your body for 16 hours. It's difficult for the first week, but it gets so beautiful and it kind of becomes an addiction. You can't live without it after a point. So if you've not tried it, that's one thing I would highly recommend you.
I have tried it, I have to admit. But I will get back to doing it in as intense a way as you're saying.
Yeah, it's just about starving your body. And it's also very beneficial for your career. The second thing that really helped me is choosing an activity that I'm genuinely enjoying. So recently taken up football. It gives me a lot of room to kind of work off a lot of calories. Yeah. So I'm not saying you take up football, you take up the activity you enjoy. I also enjoy weight training because I'm a fashion blogger. So it makes me look better in clothes.
Yep.
So those are two activities. But I think the long-term key is just choosing an activity you enjoy.
That's true. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so my final question to you of this podcast. Okay, 2 questions. Firstly, a little bit of a selfish question. I think you kind of know the work I do. You know what's happening in this office. What's your personal advice to me?
I think number one, continue doing what you're doing because you're doing a great job. I think you've got such a great team. I've had the chance to just meet them in the last, hour or so. They seem really, really pumped with what they're doing. They seem very energized, very motivated, which is great. And that's a reflection of your leadership. And just, and I think we've had this conversation before as well, focus on the things that you actually want to get done maybe in the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, because the temptation to do many things is quite a bit today, especially for your generation, because look at the amount of opportunities out there. But I think if you pick your battles and then keep changing those priorities from time to time, but have a set of very focused, fixed priorities, not more than 3, probably, 3 big things that you want to achieve. That might be the best way to go.
Yeah, trust me, the last time we had this conversation at your office, I've incorporated that into my life and I gave up on a few battles that I was fighting and it's actually benefited me a lot. The second question is just for the listeners, the viewers watching this. Could you give 3 pieces of life advice that just encapsulate everything? Career, relationships, all that. Whatever. What's your 3 biggest learnings of life?
I've never really thought about it that way, so I might struggle to put them into three. But I'll just say the few things that I try to do. Don't always succeed, but try. One is I like I said earlier. I think the harder you work, the luckier you get. So it's very easy to keep ascribing your situation or your circumstances on external factors and to say, why is this happening to me? How lucky they are. Look what happened for them. It's very easy because it takes the weight off you. It gives you a free pass to be able to figure that life's not fair. But I think life's not fair or unfair. Life couldn't care less one way or the other. You've really got to make your own, destiny. And I think sometimes you'll have setbacks. You will have setbacks. There's no two ways about it. But just keep at it, right? Just keep at it and things will break through. If you try 100 things, one thing will happen and that one thing will propel you into a range of opportunities that you couldn't have imagined earlier. The second thing is really follow what you enjoy. Make a career out of what you enjoy because you're going to be spending most of your waking hours doing that. It might as well be something that you really are passionate about, and then work won't feel like work. It just won't. And I think the third one is don't take yourself too seriously. As you're going down this path, just give yourself time. Be kind to yourself. Give yourself the time to be able to let your hair down, enjoy life, spend time with people that you care about. Don't let relationships go by that you valued, but just because of the passage of time you didn't give enough attention to and they suffered. Could be friends, could be family, could be someone that you love. Those are three pieces of advice I think I try to follow. Yeah. And like I said, I don't always succeed at it, but I try.
I know I told you that this is the last question, but I have one more thing purely because of your love for cinema and your love for content. Is there like a story that you've read in your childhood or come across somewhere in your life, maybe mythological, maybe historical, something that's just sat with you and you're like, okay, that's my dream project. That's what I want to be. For me personally, it's an animated version of the Mahabharata. At some point I want to do that because it's a story that's just like, it's always in my mind. Like since I'm a kid, it's had a huge impact on me growing up. So what's that story
for me? It's a Mahabharata.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a Mahabharata. I can't say it's an animated version, but it's just doing the Mahabharata as it should be because that's made a massive impact on me growing up. I feel every possible human emotion, relationship, situation, philosophy is captured in the Mahabharata in some shape or form. And it's just such a difficult task to put that onto a theatrical or a series format in a way that someone can get their head around, because it's just such a monumental effort. But that would be, I think, the pinnacle of what someone could achieve if one had to tell Indian stories to the world.
And I think it will happen at least twice or thrice in my own lifetime in a big way.
For sure.
I think it's one of those stories that's had an impact on a lot of world leaders or people who are hustling in life. So I'm glad to know that Mahabharata has inspired you as well. Anyway, Siddharth Roy Kapur, sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Can't tell you, obviously it was an honor, but it was very stimulating for me to pick your brains like this. So
I had a great time. Thanks a lot.
I'm glad you were on the show, sir. So until next time, guys, on the Ranveer Show from Siddharth Roy Kapur and BeerBiceps. We'll see you later.